No one is coming to save you. No one is going to pull you off the ground. And the most brutal truth is this. At some point, everyone stops waiting for you to rise. Family, friends, colleagues, even the mirror begins to look at you with pity. But that moment, when expectation dies, is when something sacred is born. Because now, there is no audience, no applause, just you and the ground. And that's where you learn. Getting back up isn't about becoming who you once were. It's about burying the version you faked and building something that was never allowed to live. Rock bottom isn't death. It's the womb of truth. They'll say you just have to want it, that everything depends on you, that where there's a will, there's a way. But these phrases are daggers wrapped in glitter. No one talks about the trauma of performance, the exhaustion of pretending to be strong, the collapse of carrying silent expectations while dying inside. You didn't break because you were weak. You broke because you were loyal. You tried to hold a role that wasn't yours, in a script where you were never given lines. And the system doesn't want you to rise, and it wants you to function, to produce, to consume, to smile, to stay silent. Picture a body lying in the street, motionless, unnoticed. Around it, the world moves on, fast, indifferent, and inside, a heart still beats, faint, but beating. That's how it starts. Resurrection has no soundtrack, no filters. It begins with breath, with a whispered no, with the refusal to accept that this is all you are. Getting back up is a secret act, almost invisible, but deeply revolutionary, because it's done without validation, without likes, without permission. It's done in the dark with dirty hands and a quiet decision. I don't end here. Why now? Because the world is full of smiling corpses. People who gave up on the inside, but still complete tasks. We're living through an epidemic of internal abandonment disguised as functionality. And maybe you've reached the point where nothing makes sense anymore, which is exactly when everything can finally begin to. Collapse is a portal, and whoever crosses it never returns the same. Why me? Because I too was discarded by the script, forgotten by the storyline, rotting behind a fake smile, and I rebuilt every piece of myself in silence. No applause, no certainty. That's why I'm here. Not to motivate, but to remind you. The world forgot you, but you still remember how to breathe. No one tells you that starting over stinks, that it tastes like dried blood in your mouth, that it hurts in your bones, your dignity, your schedule, that you'll feel ashamed of needing to relearn how to breathe. Rebuilding is not beautiful. It's done in thick silence, with tears swallowed in bathroom stalls, with an urge to quit halfway through. This is the terrain where the first movements are made, and no one applauds these movements, because they're invisible, they're internal. You say no to a toxic invitation, you get out of bed without knowing why. You silence your phone because you can't take another curated life shoved in your face. These are your new muscles. Invisible, essential. The system only values outcomes, performance, aesthetics, revenue. But real rebuilding can't be photographed. It's slow, internal, subversive. You're not just fixing yourself, you're declaring war. I am not disposable. And the world hates that. It's easier to deal with you sedated, overworked, compliant. But when you begin to care for yourself like a soldier preparing his weapon, the system panics. Because a conscious human is a threat. An awakening isn't a motivational high. It's an inner oath. No one teaches you how to fall, just how to fake being okay, how to move faster, deliver, achieve. But then your body shuts down, your soul screams, your mind collapses, and you're forced to face yourself in the mirror at 3 a.m., with war under your eyes and a heart in ruins. That mirror is the altar. That moment is sacred, because there's nowhere left to run, no one else to be. Only you, raw, exposed, true. And that is terrifying, but also healing, because no one finds themselves in victories, only in wreckage. You'll be tempted to go back, to fit in, to please, to repeat. But returning is betrayal. The path is forward, even crawling, even alone, even if no one sees. Because what's being born now isn't a better version of the old you. It's a version that never had permission to exist, and that requires the courage to bury everything that kept you functioning, but empty. There comes a moment when the world silently says, "You're done." Invitations stop. Eyes shrink. People treat your pain as an inconvenience. You become background noise in the frequency of productivity. A statistic, a body, a ghost of former potential. And the cruelest part, they speak of you in the past tense. He had so much promise. She used to be so strong. No one realizes your heart is still beating. Slowly, but still fighting. The system doesn't care about your process. It cares about performance. If you stop producing, you stop existing. But what the system calls collapse, your soul calls a rite of passage. Breakdown is sacred initiation. When everything shatters, what remains is core, stripped of decoration, identity, illusion. And there, in the rubble, you finally see what you've been hiding. You couldn't stand being who they expected you to be anymore. Falling wasn't weakness, it was resistance. Your body screamed before your mind exploded. Your nervous system begged for silence. And falling, as painful as it was the first honest act you've made in years. No one prepares you to be invisible, to be forgotten, to watch people you love move on without looking back. You'll want to explain, justify, be understood, but they won't. The world doesn't honor reconstruction. It worships results. And rushing back to normal is a trap. Those who rise too fast collapse again under the same weight. True rebuilding is slow, sacred. It happens in full days where your greatest victory is not giving up. In long nights where the only sign you're alive is a deep breath before sleep, and then you notice. Those who stay, see. Those who leave, reveal. Abandonment hurts, but it purifies. Because when you rebuild your world from nothing, every new presence becomes a conscious choice. Every step becomes sacred. You're no longer trying to impress. You're trying to exist without self-betrayal. And that is dangerous. Because a human being who no longer needs approval is ungovernable. There comes a time when pain stops destroying and starts building. But only if you stop running from it. Most people live sedated. Screens, noise, food, tasks. Escape becomes default. But ignored pain festers. And when you finally face it head-on, it thrashes, howls, tries to knock you back down. But that's just its last tantrum before surrender. Pain, when truly witnessed, becomes an ally. It transforms from monster into map. It points to every line you crossed to be accepted, every truth you swallowed to be loved, every mask you wore to survive. This is when real strength is forged. Not the shiny strength of slogans and surface healing, but the raw, subterranean kind built with bleeding fingers, rage, and whispered prayers. You start remembering what you loved, what you hated, what you buried to be palatable. Pain becomes an excavation tool. It digs through the rubble of obedience, performance, and false smiles. The more you let it dig, the more space you create for rebirth. Real rebuilding starts only when the old is burned with precision. But beware, this is when the saboteurs arrive. Internal and external. The voice that says, "You're changing too much." The friend who tries to pull you back into your former role. The invitation dressed as affection that smells like control. These are tests. The universe checking if you really mean it. You will fail, you'll relapse, you'll doubt. But each time you return to yourself, you return stronger, sharper, more dangerous to the system that profits from your numbness. Because now something inside has shifted. You no longer crave approval, you crave integrity. You no longer seek comfort, you seek truth. And yes, truth hurts. But it never abandons you. Lies are easier, but they cost you yourself. And when you choose real pain over convenient anesthesia, you're saying, "I'd rather bleed for truth than smile for survival." Eventually, you stop trying to prove. You stop trying to explain. You stop trying to be understood by people who only ever loved your performance. This is the turning point. Rebuilding is no longer effort. It becomes posture. You no longer speak louder. You simply breathe differently. You say less. You answer slower. You pause before you say yes. You become unreadable to the old world. Because now, you don't chase validation. You carry presence. And presence terrifies systems built on absence. Sovereignty is not loud. It's invisible. It's in the way you exit quietly, in the things you no longer tolerate, in the invitations you ignore, the chaos you don't respond to. It's in the silence that replaces desperation. It's in your refusal to perform emotional labor for people who never earned your vulnerability. You're not rebuilding to be accepted. You're rebuilding to be real. And that changes your frequency. You repel what once seduced you. You no longer speak the language of performance. People will say you've changed, that you're distant, cold, arrogant. But it's not coldness, it's clarity. It's not arrogance, it's boundary. You've simply stopped bleeding for people who clapped at your collapse. You're no longer available for roles that erase you. You don't want to be liked, you want to be whole. And that makes you intolerable to those who only knew how to love your silence. At this point, your life becomes sacred curation. You don't let just anything in. You clean your contacts like a temple. You re-examine habits with surgical precision, words, people, patterns. Everything must now earn its place. And each new choice becomes a prayer to the version of you that survived. Because now you know, the one who rebuilt without applause will never again live for approval. Rising again isn't about becoming who you were. It's about never going back. Because the one who fell and rose is no longer the same. Collapse tore something open. Pain rewired the soul. Silence made space. And what's returning now isn't a version. It's a rebirth. You don't want recognition anymore. You want reality. You don't crave attention. You crave alignment. What rises from ruin is not an upgrade. It's an uprising. There's a moment when you realize you owe no one an explanation, no justifications, no polished stories, because those who watched you bleed and walked away don't deserve to witness your light, and those who stayed but never saw eventually will. But that's no longer your concern, because now you belong to yourself, not as a mantra, but as a cellular truth. You survived in the dark with no one watching, and that gave you something the world can't take. Sovereignty, a quiet root, a sacred defiance. You are not what you lost, not what they expected, not what you performed. You are what remained after everything left. And that is sacred. It doesn't need to be loud, just alive, just whole, just real. You don't need to rise for them. You rise because staying down is no longer an option. If this video whispered to something inside you, leave a mark. Write in the comments a phrase they used to define you that no longer fits. Share this with someone who's rebuilding in silence. And subscribe if you're ready to reclaim your place in this invisible war. The one who rises isn't who fell, and the one who returns unchanged never really came back.